Hey everybody, this is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. So much has been made of the shifting market in real estate right now, and quite frankly, I think the market has already shifted. We can see that in real time happening all around us right now, and I feel like every day that we wake up, the market is just a little bit different. So today we're going to hit on one of those topics in a shifting market that is critically important to your business, and that is pricing your listings accurately. And there is nobody that does that better, in my opinion, than my guest this week. Her name is Linda Barron. She is from our Bluebell office. She is a perennial Chairman's Circle Diamond Award winner. She is a Legend Award winner. And she has been a top producer in Montgomery County for as long as I have been in real estate. She is truly someone that I have looked up to my entire career, and I am excited to have her on and have a conversation with her this week. So let's get right into it with Linda Barron, and we'll pick it up on the other side. Now, my guest is Linda Barron today. Many of you may know Linda if you are in Montgomery County. And I'm going to embarrass her more by saying she is an icon in real estate in Montgomery County. But one of my first jobs in real estate was being the assistant to the assistant of Linda Barron. So I was now my wife's assistant. And one of my first jobs for Linda was pulling domestic relation sheets from files so we could put birth dates into a calendar so we could remember everybody's birthday.
You have come a long way from there, Jason.
I certainly hope so. You know, I will say I do know what a domestic relation sheet is now. So 15 years later, I can say that I know that much. So how are you, Linda? It's so good to see you.
Same here. And I'm so proud of you and all that you've accomplished in real estate.
Well, thank you very much. I certainly learned from the best, that's for sure. So, all right. So tonight we are going to talk about effective pricing in a shifting market. And the reason why I wanted to reach out to you is because, bar none, I think you are one of the best agents at pricing properties.
Thank you.
And I think you are also one of the best agents at having conversations, particularly tough conversations with clients over pricing. And right now there has been so much, I guess, hand-wringing when it comes to pricing nowadays because we are in that shifting market. And it's an extremely relevant topic right now that everybody is thinking about when they go on their listing appointments. In fact, I just had my first price reduction in 3 years on a listing of mine. And I almost felt ashamed, I have to say.
I understand.
I should be wearing a scarlet R for reduction on all of my clothing now, I just had the first sale under asking in years. Yes.
And that was hard.
Yeah, it is. And so it's almost like, especially for the newer agents, this is very shocking to be in this situation. So now that the market is shifting and it may have already shifted, I think we can kind of agree to that. We know that through the data. My first question to you is, how has the shifting market changed the conversation, if at all, when you go on a listing appointment with your potential clients regarding the price of the home?
I think it's changed it tremendously because sellers have been seeing these increasing prices for the last 2 years. And they're thinking now, they're seeing all the media, reading that, the housing market has changed, but in their own reality, they're still wanting more. And so the problem is they're looking at what other people received in price in the last 2 years and thinking they're going to get these prices. And so the hard conversation is that buyers are more discerning right now. That now more than ever, if you don't price to the market to what it would appraise for, rather than some number picked out of the air, you're going to tend to have not only less offers, but you might not get your full price. Before, it might have been, instead of 10 offers, you were only going to get 5 if you overpriced it, right? Now you might not get an offer at asking. And if you miss that first few days, you lose all the leverage that sellers still may have in this market. Because I do think in certain pockets, sellers still do have leverage. But it's more important than ever to get it right off the bat.
And I want to follow up with you on that, because that actually leads me right into my next question, because you had mentioned in certain pockets, right? So when you go out to a property, and some nuance to the answer that you just gave, do you have a different conversation depending on what style of home it is with your clients. So for instance, a townhome or a condo, as opposed to a single family home that still is selling pretty well in certain neighborhoods right now. Do you have, or a luxury property, because you do a lot of luxury, is that a different conversation based on the style of home?
Completely based on the style, and more importantly, even based on the location. Because I always look at how much inventory there is. So you can look at one spot which has nothing on the market within, I do parameters. I try my best to price a property when I'm with the clients right off the bat at the listing appointment. I find that sellers don't have the patience to wait. Now, if it's a unique property, I can't do that. But if I get a lot of information in advance from the sellers before I go, is it a finished basement? How old are the systems? How updated is it? Is it neutral? The key things that buyers are going to be looking for, I tend to be able to price it or at least provide a range when we're meeting. But yes, it's going to depend. When I do that, I also look before I go out at how many homes are on the market in the price range I'm thinking in that location. So it's not only about style, it's a lot about location, because some locations I've still been in multiple offers recently. And I've still lost out, if buyers weren't waiving inspections. But that piece of leverage that sellers had, waiving appraisals, waiving inspections, is, I think, the part that's changing and going away. But yes, it's about style, and it's a lot about condition and location.
Well, you mentioned competition, and obviously there's going to be more competition now than there has been before. And, I would tell my clients when I would go out and talk about pricing, there is no danger right now in underpricing, because if you underprice it, we're going to get a billion offers and price is going to jump, that much further. But there is still always a danger of overpricing. But like you had mentioned, you might end up with 5 offers as opposed to 10 offers.
Right. Now, the hardest conversation which I've had recently with several different clients, but is, friends advising them, for example, like this market, if you want X amount, list it for 25,000 more and see what you get, because you might get it. And there's such a danger to that more than ever right now, because buyers are more discerning and they are reading the paper. Their interest rates are higher. And by the way, higher interest rates, I don't think are the only thing changing the market. All that's doing, I think, it's reshifting the price peak that somebody can look at the price point. They're just downshifting. But when they're doing that, if they've been used to looking at a higher number and now they're looking at a lower number, their expectations are still a house looking at the higher number. So that's tricky. But sellers that are listening to advice of friends that say, just list it a little bit higher. The danger now is you're going to sit on the market, or God forbid, you're going to lower the price, and then you're going to lose all the leverage that you might have had.
Yeah, I mean, and when I go out on listing appointments and we talk about, say, the coming soon period and why that's important, and talk about leverage, I mean, I can't think of a more important time to take advantage of every single day that is on the market.
Right.
Because you talk about leverage, and it is all about leverage in these situations. And these sellers think that, they can get a little more and they're going to push a little more. And I feel like it's just the wrong strategy at the wrong time.
I am so opposed to that. And I will always say to my clients, I will price it wherever you want within reason. But my job is to tell you the truth and give you the best advice. And if you're hiring me because you want that advice, then you need to listen. If you don't want to listen, we're going to have to see how it plays out in the market. But I can't be responsible if we don't get a lot of showings, or we get a lot of showings and we don't sell it, because you've chosen to be at a higher number than you should be. And there's a huge danger. Sellers should not be looking at Zestimates and online estimates, because those tend to be wrong more than they're right. And I think that it's hard. The other piece is, and in this market, if a property has to appraise, if you pull out one anomaly, one house that got a really high price 6 months ago, and use that as your basis in that neighborhood, forget it. If nothing else is sold in that neighborhood at that number, it's almost better to look at where it started and come up with a compromise from there to where it sold. Because I have experienced recently appraisal issues, which we hadn't experienced, I don't think, because buyers were waiving appraisals. And I don't think they're doing that as much right now. They're nervous about the economy, and they're nervous about taking on something that is overvalued. So I think that appraisals are back, inspections are coming back, and you just can't pick one isolated house and say, oh, this got this, I have this, I want more.
I have heard recently, I think it was in an Inman article, someone was quoted as saying that we're in a tornado market. And what they meant by that is that, I mean, tornado may be a bad analogy, but it's this narrow path where two homes that are across the street from each other,
Right.
totally comparable to one another. One may sell and one may sit.
Right.
And it's really hard to figure out what's what in this market right now, but we can all agree that pricing obviously correctly is really the name of the game right now. And there is just less leeway going on right now with what we're dealing with. So, okay, so pricing can be both an art and a science. I think we can agree. Yeah. Same as appraisals, right? Same thing.
Right.
It's supposed to be objective, but often becomes subjective.
Right.
And sometimes you have to go by feel as well as facts. So how do you interpret with both art and science where a home will sell price-wise right now in comparison to where the comps were, say, even a month ago? Do you price slightly above where the comps are? Do you price slightly below where the comps are? What do you think is going on right now? What's the best strategy, in terms of price?
I mean, I'm not pricing above the comps for sure, because the comps, as I mentioned, had inflated numbers. So I'm looking at where those homes started, where they ended up, and a lot about, the features and benefits in each house. I think now more than ever, condition of the property, staging is it's always been important for me. I always believe that a house has to look as pristine and perfect as it can. And I'm now more than ever telling sellers that buyers are, again, more discerning. They're paying attention to the market, and now they want to spend less when they get in there. So it's got to still look great. And from a price standpoint, I never price, unless, of course, I say price. I never do. I still have to listen to what the seller wants. But my advice is never to put price over what the competition has been. And I sometimes want to be a little bit less. I never want to leave money on the table. So I'm always about pushing the price. I feel like if you look at my prices, I'm always at the top of where I think the price point should be. But I don't think we're ever above where the price would be, where the house would appraise.
Do you think that staging has become much more important nowadays? We mentioned price and all that stuff, and I know you always do, but I'm just saying, I feel like it's becoming, there was a point in time where people used to take their own photographs of the property, right? And people started using professional photography, and like, wow, what a revelation.
Right.
And then, we had people that have always staged in some capacity, but now I feel like it's that next step in evolution of an agent that, you're offering staging with what you're doing.
And that's what I do. I pay a stager.
Yeah, me too.
I provide an hour consultation that I pay for, and then they get a full presentation from that stager of what they should do. And it's like a roadmap for them to either do these things themselves, or they can hire the stager. That part is up to them, but it's more critical than ever, because you still want them to get the best price that they can. And, buyers are looking online first. And because there's going to be more competition at this point, you've got to stand out. So I think it's more important than ever.
Yeah, and I was at an event recently, and Jared James was speaking and said that we were heading into a pros market. And I think I think that's a great term. And I think part of that pros market and being a pro is offering the staging services with what you're doing to help get that price and kind of jumpstart those showings to get multiple offers.
Like, it helps us sell the property, and it's better that it's not coming from us, that it's coming from somebody independent.
Yes.
Because what a seller would rather say is, why do I have to paint those walls? The buyer's going to paint them anyway. Yes. So what if I just give a credit instead? And they need to hear from us that it doesn't work that way, that we live and breathe this every day, and we know what buyers are looking for. And you don't even get them in the door if it doesn't look good online.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Because that is your first showing, right? And I tell sellers that all the time. Our first showing is online.
Yeah.
Where we go from here, your house is going to sell. It's a question of where it's going to sell based on what you want to do inside, to get those things right. All right. So do you feel like, along those lines, you had mentioned this before, that maybe there's a disconnect between our clients and what they're hearing happening in the market? Do you feel like sellers are becoming more savvy as to what's happening in the market, but just still refuse to accept, I guess, that there may be diminishing returns? We're not in some crazy atmosphere anymore in terms of where the market is. What do you see out there with your clients and what they expect right now?
I don't know that they're becoming more savvy. I think that they're they're wishing they were in the market 6 months ago or a year ago, and they want that. So I think they're sort of ignoring the change of the market. And again, if they do it right, I'm very optimistic about our current market. I don't think we'll see as many offers on the same property, but I'm optimistic that we'll get the full price on a property if they do it right and listen to what we say and advise as far as pricing and condition.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, many times we can make a logical argument to our clients about, why a home should be priced based on what's sold recently or the market conditions or rising interest rates. But we all know that emotion often gets the better of everybody. I mean, listen, if you're selling a big asset like that, you can imagine there's going to be a lot of emotion regardless.
Right.
So everybody wants to make as much money as they can. How do you handle someone who still thinks, getting back to what we were talking about, still thinks the market will get them something way over asking, multiple offers, a free cruise in their agreement? People were putting them in at some point in time. I think at one point in time, I put we went through this one house. This was just an aside.
Right.
I went through with a buyer of mine. And I thought I was so clever because they had Disney stuff all over the place.
Right.
And so with our agreement, we included 2 Disney gift cards for $1,000 a piece.
That is very, very clever.
And I was like,
did you get it?
No. I was like, this is in the bag. We got
it. That is hilarious.
We were way over.
I love that.
I'm like, slam dunk. We got it.
That is so great.
And sure enough, there was like 15 offers and we didn't get it. So, but I thought it was a great idea.
I love it.
But, people are still expecting that. Obviously, we're talking about that. So how do you win them over to your way of thinking? Is that possible? Or do you kind of hedge a little bit and just do the best you can?
I mean, I do the best I can. I try to get a sense when I'm talking to them where they were thinking. And so that I know where I'm thinking before I even tell them and I'd like to hear what they're thinking. And if they're out in left field somewhere, there are a couple listings that I've not taken because the price was so ridiculous. But on the other hand, I've provided a lower number anyway and then not gotten the listing. And in the end of the day, those homes eventually sold right at the numbers that I was suggesting, but they stuck with the realtor that started higher. So I'm not always sure the strategy of walking away is the right thing, but if a seller wants to start higher and agrees that if they don't get what they want, they're willing to bring the price down, that's a different kind of conversation as well.
Well, especially in that luxury market that you often delve into, that you may pay a fortune in marketing, and it was at least pre-pandemic, you may have something sit on the market for a year.
Right.
Not sell, and then you lose the listing. They come down to where you wanted to be anyway with another agent and they sell it. I don't like buying any listings. I know there's agents that obviously we all know that buy listings out there, and we know they're buying the listing.
Right.
For those out there listening, buying the listing would be coming in at a super high price, knowing that they're going to have to reduce the price in the future. They just want to get the listing out of it. And Linda, I think I'm the same way as you. I just give a price. I think, you owe that to your potential clients. At least you're being honest, you know.
And if they want to list higher, it depends on the client, on the house. I've had occasions where I've listed higher than I've wanted, and some have come down. And it's hard because the last 2 years, most of sellers wanted multiple offers. They still do, and they would listen to, if you list to the appraised value, they were going to get them, and they did. Now they might not. So then what happens is we're going to have to wait and see what's going to happen now when sellers are not going to get their full price and they've listed higher than they wanted to list. Will they stay with that realtor? Will they change realtors? I mean, I think that, as you said, we owe it to them to be honest with what we see. And then if they still want to be higher, we have to sort of play it out and see what happens.
How are you approaching right now? Let's say you have a listing on that isn't selling, and you think you do need to do a price reduction, but before the rule of thumb was, well, let's give it 30 days and see how it does, and then we'll reduce from there. Do you think the calculus has changed because of COVID? Like how soon are you suggesting a price reduction in this market if it hasn't sold?
I mean, luckily, I have to say I've only had one listing that hasn't sold at its price. And I don't think I've had any listings recently that have been on the market for more than 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I haven't had to have many of those conversations, but that's going to change. That's not just me. That's a lot of people, a lot of realtors. But I think that what I'm seeing right now is 14 days to 17 days, people are changing prices. And I anticipate that that's what we're going to still see for a while. Is if you wait 30 days, you don't want to be 30 days on the market even now.
Isn't it funny how the psychology has changed?
Yeah.
Because, I agree with you. After 14 days, if we haven't sold it, it's probably time for a price reduction. Whereas before, like I mentioned, 30 days, and that didn't seem like any time at all. Like,
I know.
30 days that's not a big deal, right?
No.
And now it seems like an eternity if it hasn't sold in 2 weeks. It's just the psychological factor of what COVID has done and the COVID market has done to everybody out there is crazy.
What I've seen, though, instead of a price reduction, is that by the 14th day, people are more willing to consider something that's not full asking. If they've had a lot of showings or they've had no showings, they're thinking something's wrong here because I know that everyone else has sold so quickly, and they're a little more willing to negotiate. And I've seen that.
Yeah, for sure. I think after 7 days, I think you're starting to see offers below asking, which is amazing. And ultimately, I think it's a good thing because we just could not keep the breakneck pace that we were going. And we are seeing home inspections come back in. I remember, doing my first home inspections earlier this year again. Right.
And
I was like, what is that? Like,
I know.
I felt like I didn't know what I was doing,
I know.
I was a rookie agent again.
But I think buyers, though, are still thinking, are also reading the papers and listening to their friends. And they're thinking now it's shifting to a buyer's market. And they have to be really careful. I just wrote an offer last week that we didn't get. And my client said, well, I'm cash. I'm going to trump everybody else. And I'm like, not necessarily. In this pocket, there's no inventory. In this price range, in this location, you're going to have to be over asking. And he wasn't over asking enough and was astonished to where that he didn't get the property and that it sold higher than he thought. So we're in that middle ground with both buyers and sellers that we have to educate them.
But I think you bring up a really good point because, we're trying to figure out this market. And I think I think what you say makes total sense, that if there is not a lot of competition in a particular desirable neighborhood, that's the one that's going to still go over asking and maybe eventually go way over asking, especially in certain price points, 400 to say 800,000.
Definitely.
That's going to be the bread and butter of everybody out there.
And that's right where we were in that price range.
Yeah.
And this buyer is still astonished that he didn't get the property.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'll get a deal on the next one. You know what I mean? Because you never know what's.
I mean, I said to him, it's start to look at things that have been on the market for more than 14 days. But,
Yeah. And I have a lot of newer agents that listen to this podcast, and I think they're kind of scared to death that they hear a lot about what's coming.
Right.
I do want to say you're going to be fine. This is not 2008. This is not 2009.
Yeah.
2010, 2011. Like those were very not great years. But, this is a correction year and that's okay. It
is. I mean, we're still going to be fine. We're a highly desirable area in general, and we still don't have good inventory. So if we take advantage of all of the right things to do, we'll be fine. And our sellers will be fine.
And also, I was talking to one of my clients. The other thing I said to him is that we're in a very stable market too. Right. Yeah. Back when everything was inflating artificially, way back when, places like Tampa, Las Vegas, places in California where they were seeing their values cut in half overnight when the crash happened. We were always very stable. I think we never went below, I want to say 5% was the average dip, or 5% above. We don't get those crazy swings.
Right.
It helps the market around us anyway. So I wanted to ask you, how would you approach pricing a home in this market if it was your own home today? How would you price your own home? Now, we tell sellers all the time, you got to do this, you got to do that. How would you price your own property if you were putting it up for sale?
I honestly would do the same. So I happen to be in my own experience, I'm in a neighborhood where nothing's staying on the market. But because of that, I would not overprice it, but I would price it on the highest end of where something like my house has sold. But of course, I feel, as I'm saying this, I'm like thinking, well, but I have this and I have this better location, so maybe I'd be a little higher. It's hard to do this for yourself.
Yeah, I asked you that question because I contemplated, when we bought our new house, we kept the townhouse, and I've had a tenant in there, and we were contemplating selling it this past
Right.
year, just because the market was the way it was.
Right.
And I started to get some dollar signs in my eyes,
Right.
justifying this and that.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? I can understand from a seller's perspective
It's
why
true.
you want to push it,
Yeah.
I just want to ask you that question because I think it's a unique
I agree. And
know?
even knowing, as I'm thinking this out loud, knowing what my neighborhood sells for and what my house would sell for, I would be tempted to like, well, I think I just should add this little bit because I have this or that. So it's hard to do it for yourself.
It is.
And I did it. In 2008, I did it for myself as the market was crashing. And it was really hard to do that.
I remember your old house was beautiful.
Thank you. But I was like lowering the price, like I wasn't waiting more than 3 days and I was lowering the price again and again. So of course now I look back and think, why did I do that? But the truth is we had to do those things then.
Yeah, we did. I mean, just like life, timing is everything, especially when it comes to real estate. So while we're here, just to get you on the record, what do you think 2023 is going to be like in terms of real estate? What's your best prediction?
I think that we're going to be flat but steady. I think we're going to keep we're just going to keep plugging along and doing fine. I think that our inventory right now, I think I've seen it even slow down in the areas that I'm selling most of. We're getting less inventory right now. And I think it's because sellers don't know where to go. And they also, which they haven't known where to go for a while, but now they're sitting with mortgages at a certain percentage and saying, if I go now somewhere, even laterally, I'm going to pay so much more if I need a mortgage again. So I'm seeing the inventory in drips and drabs, but still slow. And I think as long as there's not a lot of inventory, it's still going to be a bit of, it's still going to stay a seller's market, but I think that's going to level off.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, I saw something interesting come back into play, at least recently where we are. Mm-hmm. And I know this has kind of been happening a little bit more on the main line, maybe some other parts of our Fox and Roach footprint, but I'm seeing brokers opens happen again.
I know. I've noticed that too.
I haven't seen in a very, very long time. So are you going to start hosting more brokers opens again?
I'm not so quick to want to do that because first of all, I always believed doing those brokers opens was something the sellers were, they saw that we were doing something and that felt good. But although I was a huge advocate of brokers opens, but I'd rather spend money doing social media and other things that are going to get the house in front of people rather than just realtors. I'm not ruling it out. I'm just not rushing to do that right now.
Well, I'm just really aggravated that I've had to pay for my own lunch every Wednesday for the past, 3 years. Right. I'm talking to all you agents out there. It's time to start ponying up for a free lunch now and then, again. So
look, I always think it's good for realtors to see inventory. That's what I always believed. It wasn't just about making the seller feel good. I was always happy to see what was out there so that I knew when I was talking to a buyer that I'd been in the house. But I'm just not sure that people are completely over COVID yet. That's number one. And number two, I just think there's some better things to do right now than rush back to doing brokers opens.
I totally understand. I think, this goes back to, again, talking about the newer agents. I do think that one of the things that really helped me, like you had mentioned the inventory with the brokers opens and getting to know what's around you and they're at a disadvantage in that regard because not many agents do hold them anymore. And I hope they will come back around again. But I take your point. I totally get it from a marketing standpoint. It probably makes
not ready yet. Yeah. And maybe it will change. Maybe that's one of the things that will change. But because as again, I'm saying that haven't had houses stay on the market long enough yet to worry about that. But I think if we're going to start to see that more, then I'm open to doing that again.
Well, Linda, this is always enlightening every time that I get to talk to you. I am going to ask you one last question here. Okay. And this is a really tough question. So I just want to, I'm going to blindside you a little bit with this one. Okay. So I know I saw you this weekend at breakfast and you were heading to the Eagles-Cowboys game.
True.
And I know that you are a huge Eagles fan and you have season tickets. You always go to games and you generously offer me tickets every once in a while, which I truly appreciate. Right. So a hypothetical question for you. Would you be willing to give up a multi-million-dollar listing and it has to sell? It's not, so there's no loopholes here. It has to sell for another Eagles Super Bowl this year.
That's a really hard question. Wow. Maybe Maybe.
I wanted to
I'm
see.
thinking maybe. Yeah.
So I wanted to see what
we're going to be there, so I don't have to give up anything because we're going to be in the Super Bowl.
Well, that's true. But I'm saying
my philosophy with Eagles,
you would
is
have
always,
to give it up. You know,
I'd have to give up the listing.
Well, you'd have to give up the listing for them to actually win the Super Bowl. It's tied to them actually winning it.
Oh my gosh, Jason, that no one's ever asked me anything like that before. I have to get back to you on that one. I have to sleep on that one.
You know, when I was formulating this question last night, I'm like, how high should I make this listing amount?
I love it. Yes, it really depends on the. No, I don't know on that one. I might go for the Eagles winning and give up the listing.
Wow, I love. You know what? I respect you that much more now. I gotta say,
I've been going to the game since I'm 10 years old, so I remember the years when we won 0 games and we just put out banners that said "You got to believe." So I don't know. Some things are worth more than money.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that answer, and you know what? I expected no less. So. That's fantastic. Well,
but they're going to be there anyway. Have no fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm feeling good this year. So, all right. So I'll let you get out of here. I know this is a little late for both of us. I truly appreciate you coming on with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking. I'm honored.
And as always, it's so great to talk to you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Jace. Thank you so much. Good luck.
All right. Thanks,
Take
Linda.
care. Bye.
That was the conversation with Linda Barron this week. I loved having Linda on, getting her perspective on the market, on pricing, and where we're going into 2023. Here are a couple takeaways that I had from my conversation with Linda. Number one, pricing is obviously a nuanced thing, right? It depends on what's in the property, the updates, the location, all that good stuff. But as a general rule of thumb, Linda mentions a strategy that I think is very wise right now. And if you are doing your CMAs for a listing appointment coming up and you're looking at what has sold in the past 3 months, you may want to look at where those properties originally listed in terms of price in comparison to where they sold, and kind of settle on a listing price somewhere in between those two margins, right? Because in this market, you don't necessarily want to price the home over where the latest comps have sold because of the rising interest rates and because of other factors in the market. That may be a good strategy to land somewhere in between where your comps have originally listed and where they sold. Which brings me to point number 2. It still depends on what type of property it is, right? And how much inventory is out there. So if you have a condo that's in a condo building where there are 10 other condo listings and they're all sitting on the market, obviously that's going to affect your listing price. The same goes on the opposite end. If you are the only single family home in a desirable neighborhood, obviously, that home may still get multiple offers if it's in a certain price point that brings in a lot of buyers. So obviously there is a lot of nuance to what I'm saying right now, and there are many caveats to this conversation, but it's all based on leverage, right? If you have the leverage, if you're the only home that's going to be on the market in an entire township, obviously you're going to be pretty popular. And on the opposite end of that, if there are so many listings flooding the market in a condo building, you're not going to have as much leverage when it comes to dictating a high price. Lastly, I love this topic because of the way things have changed in the way that we do business since the COVID market has started. Linda and I both agree that when doing price reductions, and many of us are going to be doing them in the near future, I would not wait 30 days, which is kind of the traditional marker for reducing the price. And obviously you have to have these conversations with your sellers, but I do believe that every day on market is critical, more critical now than it ever has been. And if you wait 2 weeks and your property has not sold, I really strongly feel that it's time to do a price reduction. We're still in that mode with buyers and their psychology that they have to move quickly. And I think that COVID market has sped up this timeline. So I think 14 days is a pretty good marker to see whether you're actually going to get your price or you need to reduce that price based on where we are in the market right now. Of course, I want to say this may be different in the luxury market. things tend to take a little longer to sell in that luxury market, so this timeline may not apply to $1 million plus properties, but anything below that, I think that the 14 days fits the bill. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear a topic that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to our podcast or left us a review as of yet, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski. I thank you for listening. Stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.